Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets to help you on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to I Am Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth Braswell. Thank you for joining us on another Sunday morning as we present to you another episode of I Am Dad Podcast. Thank each and every last one of you for listening throughout the week. Our numbers continue to grow throughout the week. They always peak on Sunday and then really peak on Monday. But they're also beginning to move during the week. And a few weeks ago, a real spike happened on a Thursday. I don't know what was going on, but folks are really beginning to pay attention to what we're talking about. As I said, continue to make sure that you hit the subscribe button, the follow button. All of that stuff matters in the algorithms. According to FeedSpot, which is a platform that oversees blogs and podcasts around the world, 2 million to be exact on the podcast side. There is a category of fatherhood and dad blogs around the world. They have categorized about 1,800 of them. And I Am Dad Podcast is number 7. And so we are proud of that. It is cool because it looks at more than just likes, subscribes, and follows. It also looks at content, quality, consistency, integrity, and a bunch of different other categories that it looks up, and then it comes up with a rate at the end or a number at the end, and that's how they rank it. And so I'm not satisfied at 7. I need to get to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That means I need you guys to, because that's the only category that we're kind of low in, and that is the follows and subscribe, because I don't push that. And my wife keeps beating me over the head and said, you got to tell people what to do. I'm like, okay, we'll try that and see if it works. So this morning, though, I have a very special guest, a longtime friend. I don't even remember how we connected. I absolutely love the work that she does. And you know, the work that we do with Fathers Incorporated kind of leans a little bit into the literacy side for a number of different reasons that we're talking about today. But her name is Wenjen, and she has a blog called pragmaticmom.com. And so make sure you write that down. It's going to be in her bio when this posts, pragmatic.com. She's also the co-creator and the president of Read Your World, where they celebrate Multicultural Children Books Day. And that day takes place in January. And we're going to talk about that as well. Her debut picture book, Somo Joe, by Lee and Low in 2019, was selected as a Bank Street College Best Children's Book of the Year. Food for the Culture, Sustainable Farms Around the World releases in spring of 2023. That's past, right? So the book is already out. That's already out. So make sure you check that out. And she's got some more books coming out in 24, and I'm sure more books after that. And we'll talk about all of her media contact information. Mia, how are you?
Good. You know, someone asked me, like, wait, you're doing a podcast? Like, how do you know him? And then I remembered. It was way, way back when we were just like looking for, like who was doing like, work supporting literacy. And you were doing that barbershop books where you were donating books so that fathers could read books to, their young boys in the barbershop chair. And I thought like that was such a brilliant connection to sort of have fathers involved with literacy and putting it in a barbershop, which is, it's sort of like a rite of passage, isn't it? Like a father and son bonding. And I just thought that was like such a brilliant idea. And I knew we wanted to help. And so I think I reached out, I think I found you on Twitter to say like, oh, do you guys need books? And you're like, sure. And we sent you books. I don't think we had only sort of like Black themed books, but we just sent you like whatever books we had, and you were so gracious to take it. And that was sort of, I think, how we met.
Thank you for reminding me, because that drives me crazy when I forget how I meet people. And so you'll be happy to know that program, Real Dads Read, is still moving. It is just has taken on a whole nother life, in my life, which keeps me attached to the literacy side. And so currently here in Metro Atlanta, we have libraries in over 100 facilities, barbershops, and we've expanded to schools through something else that Real Dads Read connected me with and got me involved with, and that was sitting on the board of Little Free Libraries, right? And so I get to sit on the board.
And our board. You were on our board as well.
Yes. And so all these folks are pulling me in the literacy space, and people are like, what is going on? What does that have to do with fatherhood? And I'm like, okay, let's slow down. Let's talk about the connection with literacy and fathers and research and books and authors and all those things. And all of that stuff kind of pulled me into becoming a children's book author myself, because most of what I was looking for with fathers at the kind of core theme of children's books didn't exist. So I had to create them myself. And now I'm 4 picture books in, a graphic novel I'm about to release, 2 affirmation journals I'm about to release, and many other ideas. A Christmas book for small kids I'm about to release, and a small affirmation journal for young children. And so, Mia, thank you for allowing me and pulling me into that space. I know order is not always designed, and it just kind of happens. But I'm in here now, and I'm just trying to figure it out and really trying to at least do our work in getting particularly men and fathers to understand, A, the importance of literacy, but B, that they can make a tremendous impact on their children and how they learn and their thirst and desire and interest for reading and knowledge and all of those things. So thank you so much for your role in pulling me into that space. And I'm here for whatever you're doing, however I can help. You're going to always have a friend in me.
Oh, thank you. No, you were always in that space. We just connected because we were both, doing it, at the same time. But no, I didn't pull you in. You were 2 feet in all on your own. So kudos to you,
Well, I'm more than 2 feet in now. But it's all good. It's all good. So before we get into the literacy stuff and the reading and the book stuff, we do start off our podcast by asking all of our guests a question, because it sets the stage for much of what we talk about and how we put everything else in context. And that is, Mia, tell us your daddy story. It could be from the context of you and your dad, or it could be from you and your husband and your children, whatever your daddy story is, or it could be from both. What's your daddy story?
So I'll do it with my husband. So I was always a big reader, but my husband was not. I mean, he didn't he didn't have the same, I would say, reading life as a child as I did. And so, he didn't really know children's books. And we were living in the South End of Boston at the time, which is not really child friendly. It's really single men and like young couples, not like, you don't see a lot of kids there. And when I was pregnant with our first, he went into there's kind of like little fancy boutique stores where they have, all kinds of things. And he walked out with a pop-up picture book. And this is before our child's even born. He was like, I saw this and I bought this for the baby, because we didn't know which sex it was. And it was a Macy book by Lucy Cousins, and so it was I think it was Macy's ABCs. So it had like tabs to pull and, all interactive. And I was like, oh my God, that's so sweet. Like, you want a book for the child, And he was like, I saw it. I just thought you would like it. We can read this to our child. And so the Macy books are published by, he doesn't know any of this, but they're published by Kennewick Press, which is a publishing company, like a few towns over. I think it's Somerville, it's Cambridge, but technically it's Somerville. And so I ended up as a blogger, And we ended up buying every single Macy book ever published. Anytime we'd see one, we would buy. We had this huge collection. And it was all because of, like, I think that's how he discovered children's books again, like when we had children. But he literally, that was the first book we ever, like, that our child ever got, and we read to the child in the womb.
What was the thing that you noticed the most when he read to your children? What kind of things that you saw in the interaction between him and your children that you thought, wow?
It's like that quiet bonding time, that cuddle, snuggle time, that time to connect and, kind of be there for the child, like read the book the kid wants or read it over and over again if that's what the child wants. And, my husband and I, we've done it all, like we've done all the different stages. Like I was the breadwinner at one point. I was the stay-at-home mother at one point, and I was the work-at-home mother. And he was the stay-at-home dad with our first, and then we switched places, and then he was the breadwinner, and then he was, work from home, entrepreneur. So, so at all different phases, you're, you know what I mean? Sometimes you're just like when he was the breadwinner, he was just working day and night, So there were times where he couldn't even do bedtime, and I would do 3 kids on my own lap. But, it always was a priority to try to slice in, that 20 minutes of bedtime, which is, stories. It's really like reading books together. And because like I was the one sourcing all the books, because, I was like getting lists and like getting books from like literally these book series about best books. So I had like what I thought were the best picture books. And now like everyone looks back, and even my husband, and he'll be like, do you remember that book, Halibut Jackson? Do you remember that book, Wadney Wat? And it was like, it's like this common vocabulary now, and like warm memories where we talk about, our favorite picture books that we read to the kids that, we didn't grow up with those because those books were published after we were children. But, it's sort of like this library of books that we've all read together, either individually with our children or, all of us listening. But it's kind of nice where we're like, oh, yeah, Wadney Wat. That's such a funny book. We're all like, Macy books. Oh yeah, I love Macy books. And even how each child had their own series that took them into being an independent reader. Like each child had their own series that they like loved, and it was like that aha moment where they're like, oh my God, I can read now. And so we kind of all shared those moments and those books. And it's like those books are forever. We can be, great grandparents and like give those books to our great grandchildren and say like, your, whatever, your grandmother or your mother, or like that was their favorite book, and this is the book they read when they first realized, oh my God, I know how to read. Or this was your dad's favorite book with, like the two of, like, whatever. It's just like, it's so many warm memories,
Yeah, it's so cool because that's the thing I love about talking to like authors who grew up either being read to or reading early in their lives. It was just something that we didn't do as a family. And now I see the value of it. I see the value, like you said, that speaking to the womb thing was like, once I got that and understood that, and, I think the thing that I noticed about it was, particularly with my youngest daughter, because she was the one that I started doing it first with, was the moment that she was, outside in the world with me, where I literally had her in my hands, that the moment I start talking to her, her eyes just like popped open, like she recognized the voice, like she knew who I was. And that for me was sold it. Like if it was a swampland in Florida, I would have purchased it right there at that moment. And so it's incredible to kind of see those kinds of things happen. But the question I have for you, because also love hearing about the journey into literacy. Now, was this something that you just always knew you were going to get into, or how did you get into and so deep into this space of literacy?
Yeah, no, this is like a weird journey. So my oldest was in first grade in a K1 class because, just for numbers. And so the teacher was chronically ill. And so we literally had substitutes for substitutes. And by April, I realized like all the first graders were really far behind the other first graders in the school, like late years behind in reading and in math, because it was like subs for subs. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I got to catch her up, because like you can't be behind in first grade. I mean, that's when they're learning how to read independently. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of learning going on. And for the kindergartners, it's like less of an issue. So I started like trying to figure out first of all, what are the holes? And then how do I catch her up? And I'm not a teacher. So I would like ask every mom friend I had who was a teacher and I tried everything. I tried Explode the Code, phonics books. I tried phonics systems. I did Singapore math, kindergarten and preschool and first grade. I did word. I just did everything under the sun. I would just work her through it. And she was like one of those quiet kids who like doesn't like to hear her voice. So it was like very hard to get her to read out loud. But if she doesn't read out loud, I don't really know what she knows and doesn't know. So I was doing like, you read to me, I'll read to you, like that series of books. So that kind of coax her into reading. And so anyway, I'm doing all this stuff and I'm telling the other parents and they're like, wait, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing this. And I'm like, I like this. I don't like that. I tried this. This didn't work. This seems to work. And so they're like, can you just tell us what you like? And so that's when I started. I think I started blogging and I just started listing. These are the things I'm doing and the things I like. And then because I was just reading to the kids, and my kids are actually a quarter Chinese, a quarter Japanese, and half Korean. So I did like 3 book lists: Japanese American, Chinese American, Korean American, because I was also just looking for picture books for them so that they would understand their culture. And the Korean one went like slightly viral because it was a pretty new blog, but I was like, whoa. Like, my friends who were Korean American are like, oh, thank you for that list. I bought every book on your list and I sent it to 20 of my Korean American friends and they're buying every book on that list because it was just so hard to find, anything that was, like diverse books at that time. Like it was, my daughter's 23 now. And so anyway, so then I'm blogging along and I have my, lists, all kinds of books, just like, because we're literally reading, I'm going to the library, 3 different libraries. I'm going to the libraries 3 times a week, 30 picture books at a time, which is all I can carry. And I'm pulling them all from lists, so like lists from other libraries, because then the books are more likely to be there. And every night I'm reading 10 picture books to my kids. So like we're just cranking through the books. And then I'm covering like the ones I like. And then I would say like 1 year into blogging, I saw that study by Lee and Lowe that said the number of diverse books has not increased in the last 14 years. I was like, what? That's crazy. Because like I'm from Southern California and I had gone to like my goddaughter's birthday party, who was like, I don't know, she was like maybe like 6 or 7. And I was like, 19 out of the 20 girls are mixed race.
Wow.
Like, this is crazy. So I decided I would just put it out there on social media. I'm going to focus on diverse books right now because I feel like there's good books out there that nobody knows about. So I just want to put a spotlight on it. And then another blogger, Valerie Boudère, who blogged at Jump Into a Book, which was like extension ideas at the time, reached out and she said, I saw your post, like, let's talk. So we got on a phone call and she was like, we should start our own holiday. I was like, you do that? She was like, oh yeah, you just pick a day.
Right.
And we're like, okay. So we met in the spring. We're like, the fall is too busy. The holiday season's too busy. Like we randomly picked a day at the end of January, which we didn't even know it was Holocaust Remembrance Day. So like we've had to switch since then. And we were all bloggers. We all grew up. I mean, our blogging community was all children's book bloggers, and we were all like, in kind of in the same circles. And so we decided, like, we know publishers wanted reviews, so we would get, our thing. We get books donated, and then the bloggers would write reviews, and then we put all the reviews in one place on our holiday, and we would share it on social media. And, it's like everyone wins. And that's kind of how we started. And then as time went on, because we were always like, okay, our whole thing was like, to wag the dog, what you really need to do is drive the sales of diverse books. You can tell publishers to publish books all you want and shame them or scold them, whatever, but the tail wags the dog. So it's the sales. I mean, because I have an MBA and I'm an entrepreneur. So it's like, I know, follow the money. So we're like, if we can just get more of these books selling, then, the publisher's interest will increase. And so we were sort of put it out there, like, anyone need a book? What kind of book do you need? We're here to help you find the book that you need when you need it, that kind of book. Because, like, for example, like, I used to go into my kids' preschool and do like a Chinese New Year event every year. And I got this like paperback, Chinese New Year book at like a bookstore, like in the sales section. And honestly, it was the worst Chinese New Year book. It was so boring. And I would use it year after year. And then finally I made like a Chinese New Year book list. And I was like, okay, this clearly is the worst book. And look at all these other better books. And so, it's sort of like run home, like, there's good books. You just have to find them, you know what I mean? And then read them and evaluate them. And, there's all kinds too. There's like some that are more about the zodiac and some that are more about the great race and some of them are more about crafts and how a family celebrates in China or in the United States. So, there's like, it's kind of what you need when you need it. And so because we were always saying like, hey, what do people need? We'll either find a list, we'll make a list, or we'll find the book for you. Like, I'll just do the Google search or whatever. I would start to get like, like inquiries like, hey, do you know this? Do you know that? And someone would be like, do you know like Native American middle grade nonfiction? I will be like, I mean, I'm literally researching it because that's what I also want to promote on my social media, So for the nonprofit and for my own. So I'm like, yes, I do. And like, here are my recommendations. And then it would be like, do you know Latinx, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yes, I do. And then one day it was like, do you know Asian American? And I was like, oh, wait, I wrote something because my daughter was in pre-college for Rhode Island School of Design. She was an illustration major and her project was to make a picture book. And she was like not getting any sleep. She was commuting from Boston, which was like literally like a 4-hour commute round trip. And she was falling asleep and she was missing her stops and it was like crazy. So I was like, oh, you want to do an Asian American, like, whatever, notables or activists, whatever. I'll just like find them all for you. You know what I mean? Like A to Z. So that, because it's really an illustration project. And then, so I found it, I wrote it. And I was like, here you go. And she was like, I can't use that. That would be cheating. So I was like, okay. Then I was like, I might as well just finish it. Maybe she'll illustrate it because she's doing the illustrations anyway. And anyway, so I just went to the back burner. And then when someone said, oh, we're looking for someone to do Asian American anthology nonfiction of notables, I was like, I have 26 of them. Here you go. And so I had to do sort of this like bake off. Here, I think I have the book, and compete against other authors. But I ended up writing this book for Scholastic.
Okay.
And it's only available through the book fairs or the flyers. And so that was sort of, and then at the same time I had taken a picture book class at like literally like my high school, community education class. And it was great because we actually had 3 like very talented illustrators who were just taking the class because they were mostly illustrating. And like Janie Ho was one of them who she's illustrated, I don't know, 36 books for Nosy Crow, and then went on to write her own. Jen Benton was in that class, and her debut picture book came out not as a result of that class, but she had been working on it. And then their other friend who only went to the class once, but she was like a new illustrator awarded, and super nice. She's still in Boston. And so I had written the Sumo Joe manuscript for that class, but then I was like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to write a query letter. I don't know how to get an agent. And then I saw that Lee and Low competition, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if this is good enough. And then my middle daughter was like, no, I think Sumo Joe should be a book. And so the day before I was going to go on vacation, it was still a 2 week before it closed. I was just like, I'm just going to send it in because you don't need a query letter. You just need to put your name and your phone number and your email. And so I sent it in. And then as I say in when I do classroom visits, raise your hand if you thought I won that competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I did not win. I did not win, actually. Yeah. But I did get a letter that said, you didn't win, but we liked your story and we wanted to know if you wanted to work on it with us. We'd give you free editorial. And I was like, that's how I could use free editorial. Right. So we probably spent 6 or 9 months on maybe 3 rounds of edits. And then they offered me, a book contract. So
yeah, hear these stories from authors, and that is the thing that I just have no patience for. And that is sending your stuff out there, I listened to Kwame tell me his story about the number of times that Crossover was turned down, before someone actually picked it up, and that has taken his career.
And Newbery Award winner, by the way.
Yeah, right. And so, the moral of the story is stick with it, right? But the patience of the story is no, especially when you're you have something birthed inside of you and you want it out there for people to have. So how did you?
I have another story for that, because then my middle daughter, the one who said, you should get that Sumo Joe published, she also told me in high school, there's no Asian American female athletes, of any note. And I was like, Chloe Kim, you love Chloe Kim? She goes, she's the only one. So I ended up writing this book, Changing the Game, just to show her, look at all these gold medal Olympic athletes, and we were trying to publish it right at the pandemic. And Asian American women were literally being attacked and killed in San Francisco and New York's Chinatown. And my agent, which is a non-traditional agent, but he literally was the media company, the book packager that hired me to do that book. Because during the pandemic, he said, no one's doing book packaging anymore because no one's meeting face to face. So I'm just sending in, I'm talking to my writers. And if you don't have an agent and you have a manuscript, let me send it in, because I actually know some of the editors, and let me see if I can get it published, because I did that and I got someone else's book published. So anyway, so he said, so we said, oh, let's just do this as a Kickstarter, which we did it, we had it all lined up for a Kickstarter. And then he said, let me just try to sell it, because, Asian American females is sort of front page news right now. And so he tried and he tried and he tried to, we kept saying, Scholastic, are you interested? And they're like, no. So then I ended up doing it as a Kickstarter book myself. And then 3 years later, as of January, it actually came out in June, Scholastic bought reprint rights. So now this is coming out through Scholastic. Again, just the book fair and the flyers, but
have you noticed that the publishing kind of journey to actually get your book to the masses changed for the better or for the worse? Because one of the things that has happened as a result of the pandemic and other things is that, people had a lot of time on their hands. And so, a lot of books were written, a lot of books were self-published, a lot of stuff is out there. And a lot of it wasn't good. A lot of it is just like, I can't even tell you the amount of books that people send me on fatherhood. And they're like, could you help? I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, nah, I know you got a great story and I know your story is very personal to you. And I know it probably means a lot to you. And that's what drove you to write this book. But everybody who has a great story isn't an author. And there's a process to doing that. Have you seen in the last at least few years that more people are in this space and particularly people who read books and write books are having a hard time sifting through all the stuff to really get to quality books?
Well, I mean, I think like getting to the masses is like a multi-pronged issue. It's like if you have if you have a very large publisher, then you have more distribution channels, like you can get into bookstores, and libraries. But on the other hand, unless you're like the big book of the year for them, you're not getting that much marketing time. You're maybe getting like 3 weeks of their attention. And so I've known authors who have big publishing companies, and the book went from picture book to board book, which meant it did very well. And then it got killed. Like literally the book is, they killed the book. So it's no longer in print. And I was shocked because I was like, your book literally went to board book. I saw it myself at Target. You know what I mean? Like, but they did a lot of culling during COVID also. I mean, it's a business. And so it costs money to print books. It costs money to store books in storage. And so then the next layer is sort of like, okay, smaller publishers, like Lee and Low, like Barefoot Books, which I have books coming out with. And so they don't have the retail, like they don't have access to retail.
Right.
But retail is also changing, where you have Barnes & Noble saying, we're not stocking so many titles of children's books anymore because basically we're culling the list to have fewer titles, the ones that sell well. So, I mean, you have all kinds of pressures, but the smaller and the medium-sized companies, they're mostly focused on the library and school market, but they're less likely to kill your book. So, like Lee and Low said, Sumo Joe will be in print forever with us, and so there, because also the trajectory for a book to take off is not a sort of like straight line.
Right.
It can be like very good at the beginning and die, or it can be topsy turvy, or it can it's its own unique journey. So
Right.
You know what I mean? Like a book that doesn't do well in the first year doesn't necessarily mean it will never. I mean, you know what I mean? It's all kinds of other factors that maybe even you have no control over what makes a book.
I think
well.
too is you got to have your I tell people we have our niche, right? My niche is fatherhood. And so I don't really have to, when I create a book around fatherhood or related to fatherhood, or specifically I'm writing it because my intention is to have it being used as a tool in schools or those kinds of things. That's the only place I'm looking. I'm not looking out into the mass public to get it. Now, if they see it and they like it and they want to buy it, then I'm fine with that. But that's not the focus of why I created the book. I think about the graphic novel, Mia, that I just wrote. I wrote that thing 5 years ago after coming from Africa and being inspired to write that thing. And I remember talking to people about, this is literally when I think, crossover had really hit big. And some years after that, Jerry Craft books and people began to start talking about graphic novels, but everybody was talking about how expensive it was to do a graphic novel. Yeah. Right. And I had publishers said, this is a great story, but we just don't have it. We don't have the budget to to do this.
Or to do it right. If it needs to be in color.
Yeah. So I set out and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this thing on my own. But I didn't, that was a journey that I'm going to find out how to talk more and more about. That was a 5-year journey. I found a great illustrator. He gave me a nice price for each page, but each page was $100. I'm not telling you how much I spent on it, but each page was $100. My graphic novel has 200 pages plus the cover. So you calculate that up, how much I've invested into this book, but the goal was, to your point, maybe I might create this thing on my own, put it out there, and then begin to move. And some publisher sees it and say, oh, this concept is already ready-made. All we need to do is pick it up and move it and shift it and move it into its bases. And so, when I look at folks, when people are looking at self-publishing, because it's a real huge conversation now and people really want to get their stories out there, there is a challenge now particularly with minority authors looking to, get their books out there that don't have influence and don't have followers and don't have niches, but they just got a great children's story about a rabbit who, got lost in the forest and trying to find his way home, right? It's a great book. Any child would read it and hear it and like it. But publishers are like, nah, it seems to me that subject matter, particularly in the children's book space, is erratic. Like, you don't really know what's going to hit or how it's going to hit. It's just a matter of putting it out there and seeing, who pops for it, right? And so as you're working with those books, because I want to get to the Multicultural Children's Book Day and really help people understand what that is, and not so much for the day, but for you as a resource, because you walk through all these things you're seeing and all of these things you're creating so that you can level out where people can actually find these things. So talk to me a little bit about...
Let me just double back on what you were saying earlier. One is graphic novels as a market is exploding. So I know one company that literally told their editorial staff they want, one graphic novel released every week. Like into, like done, like out and into the, I don't even know how you do that because they don't have the staff to do that. So the graphic novel market is exploding. It's probably one of the brighter spots in publishing, even though it is expensive. And your book, because it's done, just if you want to get other channels like the library and school market, it's done. It's on the way to you. That's why I got the address. Yours is on your way, so you can see it. You can hold it in your hand. 200 pages. I think you should. I think you should get an agent to shop it, because you do want those distribution channels that they can offer, and then you can get in advance to offset your really high cost already. And it's a little bit easier before the book's released for them to do it. Although they'll still take it, but it's a little bit easier if they release it's their ISBN number than reprinting it. I think it's a little bit trickier. So if you haven't released it into the world, it might be worth having an agent just spend 3 months shopping it, because the market is so hungry for graphic novels, and the fact that it's done and the illustrations are done, because that was it's already done. I think it's like it's a more of a no-brainer for a publisher. It's already done, so we don't have to pay you the full cost of developing it. We can pay you less and have you earn it out as a royalty. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Okay. But then they'll give you that school library market, that's the biggest market. You know what I mean? Which otherwise it's really hard to get that. I can barely sell this on my own. Amazon won't even promote my book, even if I run ads. I mean, that's how I didn't realize. I thought I'll just promote it my own, I'll just run some Amazon ads, and Amazon won't even take my money. So
now, why is that? Explain to me why that is. Could you explain that?
I think it's because I used a free ISBN number from, whereas, but, it didn't make sense for me to buy, the ISBN number package as if I was going to be a publisher. So when they see a single ISBN number, they think, oh, it's independently published crap book. You know what I mean? So we're not going to promote it because the chances of it being very bad is high. So even if you say like, I'll spend $100 in Amazon ads, under Asian American biography, we don't want your book coming up in the algorithm. So
Wow.
we won't even take your money. Like, I was like, here's my money. They're like, we spent literally 2 cents of it. I was like,
Huh. I have
Yeah.
to look into that. I haven't even thought about doing that, but wow. We'll have a private we have an offline conversation about that because we'll have an offline conversation about that. But what I want folks to know, particularly folks who listening to this podcast and that are out there thinking about one or two things, either for many of our dads, it is like, I don't know where to start when it comes to looking for a book and reading to my children and what that looks like. And then the other thing is many of them like really want to write their own books. They really want to write their books for their children because they don't see the stories that they want to read to their children in the space. And this is the other element, and I just want to say it so we can get to it. And that's not so much that there is X number of minority related or multicultural related children's books out there, that many of those books aren't written by the very sector of people they're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you a story towards the end about what happened to me while I was in Nairobi and what I've decided to do about that. It was just interesting. So talk a little bit about the Multicultural Day, Children's Book Day, and how people can get engaged in it and what it could do for them, either as an author or someone who's really looking for books that speak to their story.
Okay, great. So we are in the process of rebranding. So we're readyourworld.org, which is our hashtag, Read Your World. And so this year, where Read Your World celebrates Multicultural Children's Book Day as a transition. But if you go to our website, which is multiculturalchildrensbook.com or readyourworld.org, which will feed into that, you'll find like a whole tab of resources. And one of them is just book lists. So we have like lists of lists, and it's like sliced and diced, like all kinds of ways, by country, by ethnicity, by genre, by holiday, and so within each category, there's more, sub groupings of lists, and each category also has, like a dozen or plus of book lists. And I personally curate them. So they're all like book lists from book blogger friends that I know, where I know they read the book and I know it's their opinion. It's not just, the Amazon publisher's blurb. And so like that's one resource where you can find anything that you need, from bedtime stories to middle grade to graphic novels. I mean, it can be, you can find things very specifically drilled down. And I kind of think that's the easiest way. Like, it's just in general, when you're looking for what, you either Google it and, lists come up, or you can go to our things and our lists are curated, because a lot of us also update our lists. So, we might have, like books for Martin Luther King Day, but it will be, as new books come out, we'll update it. And also, just if you want diverse books, so what we do is we give away free diverse books. You can sign up to be a reviewer starting in September, and then the registration ends at the end of the year. And then you'll get a book mailed to you like around end of December, early January. And that's also a great way if you're battling banned books, because you can sign up for a book that might not be available, or a type of book that might be hard to come by, like LGBTQ or, African American, and it will come, discreetly to your own mailbox, and no one knows that you're getting that book,
Right.
And then we ask that each person for each book you write, just a short review. You can leave it on Amazon. You can put it on social media. If you have a blog, you can put it on a blog. You can make a TikTok video. Just if you're a teacher or a librarian, you can just show how you've used it in the classroom as a display, or a picture of you reading it to a classroom. The person who's donating the book is either an author or a publisher, and they just want to know that you're using the book, because they're incurring the expense of mailing it as well as giving you the book. And then we have a place where you can upload when you sign up, like where you shared it. And you can also share it on a Linky on the day of our event. And you can sign up for as many books as you want. It's like if you have 3 kids and you want 3 different, picture book, chapter book, and middle grade, you can sign up, one for each child. Or if you're a blogger, you feel like you can cover like 10 books, like you can sign up for as many as you want. And then, then there's other holidays, right? Because then it's like Read Across America is in February. So you can sign up for books and use it for both holidays, or you can just, you own these books, so you can use them year round. If you're international, because most of our book donors are based in the United States, we can still get you like PDF copies of the book or like an ebook version until we build out our network of publishers like in countries, because shipping can be very expensive.
Right. Have you seen an uptick in Kindle? Have you done anything with Kindle, or are you not gotten into that space yet?
Yeah, no, because we're finding people want physical books.
Right.
And then we also have other resources. Like we make a classroom kit every year. This year it's on climate change and environmental justice. Last year it was on, I think it was on structural racism. I mean, so we make a classroom kit that's an extensive book list, activities, discussion guide, and a poster that was created by Illustrator just for that. And all of the classroom kits are available year round and they're free. And that's another resource for parents, for teachers, for librarians, for homeschoolers. And it's you can see like it started with kindness when Donald Trump got elected. So we're like, everyone was worried about, because there was just a lot of violence. And then the second one was it's empathy, but it's really immigration and the refugee experience. We have one on disability, on poverty, on activism. I mean, it's every year we try to pick what we think is what people are. Oh no, actually last year's was mental health. It was like and the year before that was on after George Floyd. We're like, we need to do not just racism, because we're seeing a lot of we need to do it on structural racism, because people don't understand the difference. And so, so every year we make this resource. We have a homeschool one, but so our website has resources that you can use year round. And then once a year, you can get free books if you sign up between September and the end of the year. And that's coming right up. It's coming right up in just a few weeks.
Cool. So as we kind of close out, I do have one more question for you. I'm just curious as to whether or not this is touching you, or you are seeing something that we're not seeing. Has this banned book thing kind of touched anything that you're doing, or you're finding that any of the books that you are moving and authors that are coming through are showing up on banned book lists?
Oh, it's crazy. At first I thought, they're just going to go after the bigger authors and it's going to amplify their books and they're going to end up selling more books. But no, since the lists are so extensive and the criteria is so vague, that in many states, not where I live, but in many states, authors are saying that their royalty checks are being decimated. Like the books are being pulled, everyone's afraid to buy them. Everyone's afraid even to, they don't have access in libraries. It's bad. I mean, there are workarounds where you see libraries like, Brooklyn and New York Public Library giving library cards to anyone, and anyone can get access, especially, ebooks. But so we're trying to fight back by saying that the kinds of books they're banning are basically diverse books, of minority representation, from ethnic groups to religious to LGBTQ. And so we're fighting back hard by saying, you can get these books through us. Just sign up and the book will arrive. And I think it's really important because the book will arrive, it will go to the reader, and nobody will know. Because I even saw, like, on Little Free Library, you have the right, the Christian right wing going from Little Free Library to Little Free Library, removing diverse books and putting in Bibles.
Right.
So it's not even enough to say, like, I'm making this book free. If the person can't, it gets removed, or people feel intimidated to get those books. But I feel like here, no one knows you signed up, period. Nobody knows what you signed up for, and,
Which is crazy when you think about it. We're talking about books, right? We're talking about children's books, and someone has to hide the fact that they want to read to their children. That's in essence what that boils down to, right?
Oh yeah, it's like we live in a dictatorship. Like, we're not allowed free thought, and it's also the reasons why they're eliminating it too are ridiculous. It's like white fragility. Like, we can't say Rosa Parks, didn't move because she, she wasn't tired. She was just tired of having to deal with this racism. Instead, you can't even say, the whole thing is, it's crazy, like, to try to erase history because because it reflects, it forces white people to reflect on the role it had in the past. Yes. And how they perhaps might have benefited from it. Like, they can't even be subjected to a moment of discomfort, wow. Whereas all the minority groups, like, we've been in worse than uncomfortable situations from, like my mother was, forced from her home for being Japanese American during World War II. Like, so we've had more than just inconvenience, and, other people can't, they don't even want to think about. For example, my son did in high school, he did his junior thesis. They have to write like a 20-page paper on the Japanese American internment concentration. And he did it, like, my oldest did it on, like, it was racist. And when my son did it, it was because because the Japanese Americans had something like 60% of the food was in California was created by Japanese American farmers. And so all these white farming groups that were, agribusiness, for decades tried to figure out how to get rid of them. And they literally went to Congress to say, like, definitely imprison them because we want those fields. We don't want them farming. You know what I mean? Right. And that's what happened. And so when my son wrote about this is this is one reason why the Japanese Americans, were forced into internment camps. His teacher literally said, that could perhaps be interpreted as a conspiracy theory. Right. Yeah. And I was like, I live in a super liberal town, right? We're as blue as can be. And I ended up having to meet with the head of the history department to say, like, which is an all white. They're wonderful teachers, but it's all white history. Right. And I was like, white people cannot define racism because,
Well, guilt has no boundaries. So
I was just like, stunned. I'm still stunned by that.
Yeah. I said I didn't have anything other, but I do have one more thing that I want to throw at you, see what your thought is on this, only because we had a big conversation about this when we were in Kenya, both Kwame and I and some other authors that were with us and Jerry Craft, and we were talking about this. What kind of an impact, if any, is AI going to have on authentic writing?
So, it's writing and also it's images, right? But I can see how, like, Midjourney can make the cost of a graphic novel, pennies on the dollar. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it doesn't have to all be stolen images. I could see an illustrator drawing the characters and the scenario, like sort of the backgrounds, and then having Midjourney say, have the characters do this, have the characters do that, as either reference or kind of get you like 3/4 there, if not all the way. And that drops the price of graphic novels because hand-drawn, as you know, you paid for it. It's super time intensive and it's expensive. As for writing, I mean, it's going to be really hard to duplicate, as we reference, like an own voices, a lived experience. So in that sense, I think maybe picture books is a little bit harder to duplicate, to write an AI, but books with longer like word counts, it's a little bit easier to do that. But I come out of staffing, and so it's impacting everything. And I think what we're thinking about it as, it has to be seen as a tool, right? A tool that everyone can harness. Like, it's sort of like, okay, there used to be typewriters, and then there were word processors, and then there were computers, and people fought, letters to email. People fought it, but you have to think of it, it's a tool, So if it's a tool, then it helps you write faster. Maybe it helps you draft, or, you know what I mean? Or helps you research. But I think one, it's unavoidable. So you have to get on board, whether you like it or not. In the sense, you have to learn how to use these tools. You have to learn how to use Midjourney. I've tried Midjourney. I haven't tried ChatGPT, but I think we all have to be familiar with how the tool works. And the tools keep changing so rapidly. Like, you can't just try it once. You have to sort of, like, I have the Neuron. I read this AI newsletter that's classmates of my daughter from Northwestern. It's a daily AI update just to see like what's going on. But I do have to play with ChatGPT. So I think we have to be aware of it and how it's rapidly changing. We have to use it, and then we have to see how we can use it as a tool for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm dug in deep. I'm dug in deep because I'm curious, and I love all technology. I love evolution. I just love evolution. To your point, looking at it as a tool, not as something that's going to invade Earth like Godzilla and trample all over all the people and just leave everything in.
I mean, it could go that way. I'm not saying it could. You know what I mean? Like, there's literally people who are trying to do AI safety. So like the machines don't take over, and it's like a Terminator world. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that is a possibility. I don't think we're there yet, but like, I also
believe in alternative universes, right? Say one universe that can happen in another one that can't happen, and it's like, everything can happen in a universe, right?
And everything can happen a lot faster than you think, because this AI, like, you know what I mean, sort of paradigm shift is happening faster and sooner than anyone, I would say, predicted.
Absolutely. Mia, let everybody know how they can get in touch with you and how you can find out more about your work.
Oh, sure. I'm on social media at Pragmatic Mom, one word. So you can find me on most platforms as that. If you can't find me as Pragmatic Mom, then on a few platforms like LinkedIn or YouTube, it's just my name, Mia Wenjen. And I have a website as miawenjen.com and a blog, Pragmatic Mom. So if you just search my name and I should come up everywhere. And my email address is public, so please reach out to me. I'm actually bad at like DMs on like on platforms, like searching and responding. The fastest way I respond is through email. So
right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. You're such a joy to talk to, and you will be hearing from me. I will be back in your mix as we continue to move throughout this year, and I get these books moving and get back into this space. And I'm going to take your advice with respect to the graphic novel. My plan was not to release it until next year because the storyline actually was inspired in Africa. So we're actually doing a book release in Ghana next May. But I was going to soft release it right before Christmas. And so I may take a step back and kind of move it out there a little bit and see if it tickles anybody's fancy. And if not,
let's get you a traditional publisher. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you to all of my I Am Dad podcast listeners. It's been a pleasure as always. Again, make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share, and make sure you leave your comments. You know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And that's my good friend and mentor, Arthur Mitchell, used to always say to me, it's nice to be important, but you know what? It's much more important to be nice. And so throughout the week, have a great week. I love you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And until next Sunday, take care.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad Podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am Dad, period.